Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Deep Thoughts. Today we're going to do a listener request from BitChute. His name's Clayton Bigsby. But I'm also going to mix in another idea I had for an episode, which I don't think is a full episode. So the two topics we're going to go for here, one's going to be new, which is the one that I've planned, but don't think it can go the whole distance without repeating myself quite a bit beyond the point where you get it. You know, it's one of the worst things about videos is that someone will explain something very well, and then they just keep going and going and going. And I know I do it due to the format length, but that's why I digress so much into other subjects. But the user request was, or listener request was, I'm so used to software, I apologize. What do I consider to be the greatest threat to us today as humanity? So that's one subject. And the other subject is, I guess for the sake of for the best title I can come up with is, I have no idea what the hell to call this thing because of the two mixing together. But one of the factors that sort of buttons up the first request is something I refer to as like hero pacification. And that is the theory that if you look at Hollywood, because it's sort of a cross-section of humanity, right? What art do we accept as imitating life, etc., is that we are fed a bunch of fictional heroes, which has occurred over the whole span of history. But today it's become sort of an epidemic of psychological medicine because we hate our lives. You know, there's too many people out there that hate their lives. And so they can go to a movie and watch a hero succeed and fight evil and all this other stuff. And then come back to their crappy lives. And then the next thing they can do is wait for the next movie. And then you go back out. That's why they can make horrible movies. But as long as the hero wins in the end, a lot of people will give it like a decent review. But it's a crappy movie. Some movies are tragedies and the kids don't even realize it. Right? Tron Legacy is a tragedy, right? A tragedy is a hero that never overcomes their obstacle. Well, Sam, the fictional character in Legacy, was supposed to go and get his father out of the system. He didn't. He failed. He brought his chick out, which causes even more problems, especially for the writers of Tron 3. But it's a very interesting question to have someone just simply ask it so clearly. You talk about a bunch of stuff. Okay, what's the biggest threat? What should we be concerned about in your opinion? Now, obviously, you have to always take into account this is one dude's opinion. You should never take one person's opinion as your complete opinion of the subject yourself. You should add your own DNA. You should scrutinize whether or not you think certain things are a problem for you, even though they might be a problem for everyone else in the world. Maybe it's not a problem for you. So you don't need to panic or anything. Last thing I want to do is create any mindset of hysteria or panic or essentially ill feeling when you wake up in the morning. If I ever tell you anything that alarms you, I want you to feel better the next day because you're like, well, at least I know the truth. You know, this was the big thing when we all started waking up about 2005. You know, you get, many of you had this question where someone says, well, how do you sleep at night? How do you sleep at night knowing all this stuff? And what they're really doing is sometimes they're being genuine to you. They believe you. They respect your research or what have you. Other times it's sort of a patronizing statement kind of built into that, you know, well, you know, none of this is true, of course, and I'm smarter than you, which is why my life is bliss, and which it's not. And I just want to know how you can sleep at night. Let me use this technique of getting you to relax off of all the conspiracy research because I'm going to make it apparent to you you're injuring yourself by learning the truth. Okay, you do lose sleep when you first wake up. Boy, do you ever lose sleep, depending on what subject matter wakes you up. Now, most of us woke up with that day in September. We didn't wake up that day, but we woke up as a result of loose change and movies like Zeitgeist and just other research. You know, as much as I don't ever watch Alex Jones anymore because he's off all social media and he's been really strange for the last 3 or 4 years. He is responsible for bringing us a ton of information. He's the first guy that videotaped Bohemian Grove. Just knowing that that faction exists allowed a lot of us to go off and do research way outside of his research. And then we realize it's a real thing. I sleep better knowing that I understand where I am better, right? None of us really know what this whole place is. None of us know if we're intentionally created or if we're just the most beautiful mistake the universe has ever made. But the universe exists. Someone made that, or it exists somehow. But how do you answer that question? You know, I thought about it, I was like, wow, that's a great, appealing subject matter. And so the question is, how do you address that? And I think that my brain automatically goes to the two most logical ways of sorting out our greatest threats into sort of the here and now, literally right now, then maybe short term and long term. What's interesting about the question is that if anyone had asked me that question, let's say I was the same age, but it's 1985, I don't know. I don't even know where I would go. Don't listen to too much heavy metal. I don't know, you know. But today, there's a war going on for the complete ideology of how humans are supposed to exist on this planet. And beautifully, because of a lot of movements, even this QAnon thing, you know, even though, you know, QAnon's pretty, I don't know. He's made so many predictions about people being arrested that, you know, well, if anyone's arrested the next week, he claims that that's the big boom. And it's like, really? You know, it's not that it was a bad boom, but it's like, we're looking for his definition of a biblical boom. And then the dude, Joe M., who seems to be in cahoots with him and makes all of his videos, who sounds like JFK Jr., he's up there just shoveling shit into everyone's head. I mean, I do not support that. I mean, I'll like every once in a while one of his tweets here and there where he goes generic, and I feel like what he's saying applies to all of us. But a lot of times he's trying to promote fucking time travel and all this other horse shit. And so you got to be careful. You got to be careful who you get your information from, right? That's why I'm, you know, routinely cynical about even things that are popular on the awakening side, because it's like, guys, we could all get had or be had by these folks, you know. Now, for the longtime listeners, this will be a lot of repeat, but maybe it's a nice episode for us to all kind of review everything that I've said and everything you've commented on, because a lot of it is based on your comments. That's where I get some empirical data about things, especially from Facebook folks that are a little bit more verbose, and they come and they post all the time, you know. I think the number one thing that we can all kind of agree on is our health. If we're not alive, then what can happen? You know, even if reincarnation exists. But, you know, if I were to go a little existential right from the very beginning, I would say, let's say that we do reincarnate. And let's say that there are multiple life entities that we could inhabit outside of this planet. Then that would make Earth its own experiment, its own captive audience of folks. And so what we would be doing is continually coming back, fighting this perpetual evil that has always existed on planet Earth. You know, it gets good for a little while in one particular region, then a bunch of assholes or numbskulls come down and beat up on utopian societies and destroy them. And then we all go back to the fucking Stone Ages, and then we all kind of realize, oh, let's try to rediscover what our ancestors destroyed. You know, that's happened quite a few times in history. And so on a perpetual sort of conveyor belt of life, I don't know. I think a lot of us talk about, you know, the potential of karmatic loops of trying to be a better person each time you come back, so that your soul leaves a little bit more pure. But the problem with that theory in my mind, which I just negated in an episode that either I just aired or it's coming, is that you don't choose your parents necessarily before you get born. And even if you do, then why would you choose an alcoholic parent that beats you, right? It might turn you into an animal killer and then a person killer, right? So blaming you for everything that's going on is sort of maybe not fair. Recently, I've been binge watching these documentaries. The main company is Deutsche. I want to say it right. Welle, W-E-L-L-E. You'll see DW in one of the corners of the episodes on YouTube. And, they have a little global warming here and there, but it's about 1%. It's not too bad. But I watched one yesterday night, that was about equality, which is a word that we're all sick and tired of hearing, because the equality that is in the forefront of like the Democratic Party is largely faux. It's fake, right? There's a gentleman, he's still alive. His name's Dr. Solwell. And he's an African-American gentleman, or a black guy, as some of us say. He's a genius. In the late 70s, early 80s, he did, I believe, his doctor's thesis on equality, as it turns out, between men and women. And everyone likes to be a victim because you get shit for free, right? You get free fucking pay raises, whether or not you have the qualifications or not. Now, I have friends that are female. They're absolutely oppressed from the salaries that they deserve. I watch them look for jobs, and they'll be 10 years deeper in experience, and they'll lose out to a male that is 10 years younger, with obviously just, they're fresh out of college. They'll be 25 years old, where they might have 3 years of college. And my friends are, they have, say, 13 years of experience or more, and they can't get the same job for the same pay. So I'm aware that this occurs, and those are assholes who run companies that need to have their balls fucking cut off, right? It's bullshit. Now, some people aren't as good as they think they are, and then they get in that situation, but sometimes, people have great pedigrees and they're being overlooked. But Solwell proved a couple things with real statistics. Okay, real people. He talked to real people, building his opinions. In the early 80s, he went on TV quite a bit. You can find all of his interviews. It's really enlightening. And he said, you've heard me say this a couple times, because I'm going to draw a big difference between the equality I watched last night and the equality that is the one I'm talking about right now, which is equal pay. He figured out that if a woman never had children and never got married and simply went into school like a normal male, which was very unique in the late 70s, early 80s, they earned 20% more than a male, as long as the establishment itself isn't corrupt, right? So that's good. You had the soccer team, the female soccer team, a lady, what was it, the Olympic team or something? A woman came out and said that women weren't getting paid as much, and we instantaneously find out they're getting paid millions of dollars more than the male team. So these liars and these fake victims mess it up for everyone who's got real equality issues. But I want to start off with this interesting thing I saw. This documentary it's fairly popular in the thumbnail recommendations on YouTube, so you probably won't have a problem finding it. They covered a guy in New York who, very intelligent guy. I mean, every time this guy spoke, it was just like you put your chin on your hand and listen to him speak. The wisdom coming out of this guy was great. But he had a normal life and a normal job, but then lost it. I don't know how old the guy was. It seemed like he's about mid-40s or whatever. But he recycles now as a way of, creating a living. He makes about $70 a day, $75 a day on average. And then he covered another gentleman in Kenya who picks the trash in Kenya. We're talking grueling shit, man. The guy in Kenya was on a junk pile, like a real junk, just food and all kinds of stuff. And all these people are in Kenya. They're picking through trash. The first thing that they do when they get to work, the males pick through the trash to find food, especially meat that has been recently thrown away. I mean, it was disgusting. flies and stuff, and they just brush it off and poof, eat it. And you see all these guys eating it first, and then they go do their thing. And that guy was making about $30 a week. But the big sort of crescendo of this episode was that it seems as if, and the other thing too is the precursor to me watching this particular documentary was probably about 10 documentaries before that, talking about how third world countries are being exploited by corporations in Europe and America and China, and some in India, I guess, too, but they're all serving usually the masters of the first world countries are consuming ridiculous amounts of crap, right? But they're taking all the things that they know are illegal in first world countries because they kill people, they poison people, and they're pushing them off from Indonesia to all the countries in Africa, Uganda, Ghana, Kenya, China. I don't think I've seen one in South America yet. But then it came to this other episode. And the episode said, when there's a huge discrepancy between the wealthy and the poor, what that does is that loses societal cohesion, right? Easy for me to say. Such that the rich don't give a shit about the planet and the poor can't give a shit about the planet because the poor are so broke they can't eat. And if they want to have one or two kids, it's already insurmountable. The guy in Kenya only had one little daughter. The guy in New York had, I don't believe, any family at all besides his family had passed already. I think his mother had passed. He talked about his mother sort of in a third person realm. And just prior to that documentary, okay, I watched another one about the Indian sand mafia. Now, I didn't know this was going on, but India's president, and I don't know exactly when this documentary was made. It may not be the president. It's the president right now that Trump just visited, but they said that they want to build a Chicago type city, which is not, just for those of you who haven't been there, it's not a gigantic physical footprint on the ground, but it's a very bustling town. And forever it had the tallest building in America, which was the world, right? The Chicago Sears building. But they want to build that level of building. It was like 30 between now and 2030. It's like the next 10 years. They build like 1.5 or so. Well, Jesus, that would be, 3 a year, I guess, right? Being ridiculous. And in order to build like that, you have to have a lot of concrete, and concrete requires sand. So in India, they have a problem where they have outlawed independent sand people like you and I going out and digging up sand and selling it to somebody. You have to do it in certain areas. Of course, there's zoning things. And when you take a lot of sand out of an area, you change the landscape. So rivers that used to flow in one way, all of a sudden just flow all over the place and they'll flood crops. And I mean, we're talking flooding entire regions, thousands of acres and killing a bunch of food, which is necessary because India's got over 1 billion people. In Huntington Beach here, we have to manage our sand very carefully because we have to pump a bunch of water against the ocean because the ocean will eventually capture the beach. I think we pump 3 million gallons of water back to the ocean every day. So it's a big deal. But because these people are so broke, because there's this huge difference in India between the rich and the poor, and the poor, it's a huge majority of the country. When they caught these guys just out in a field digging up sand and putting in the back of these trucks, they found a street with 30 dump trucks. I shouldn't say dump trucks. They're big ass trucks, okay, waiting to pick up their sand, and it was all illegal. And they went to the police, and the police said, "Oh, there's nothing. None of that's happening." And they go, "We just recorded it." Oh, well, maybe there is a couple, they're all paid off, right? So even the politicians are taking money to look the other way. Because I'm sure from the politicians down from the president, like, yeah, get it done however you can. Who cares if some farmer loses this? That's just the attrition because we made this outrageous goal to build all these big cities, right? Meanwhile, in India, you'll have a city with 10 million people with less than 100 bathrooms in the whole city. So people are defecating and pissing everywhere, and, which gets the place nice and polluted. E. coli, type infections and that kind of stuff. So it's bad. So that's sort of a macro view of something I hadn't really realized. But once I had it explained to me in this video, I was like, yeah, that makes sense, And so you will have, that's why you can't have, in my opinion, folks coming in and just trying to address just the poverty side of things, or just trying to steal all the money from the rich and give it to the poor. Because the next thing that happens is you get sort of a middle class that is sort of like the third act of WALL-E, where everyone's, floating in chairs and they have barely any bone density and everyone's a loser. The reason why I mentioned that at the beginning is that they talked to a teacher at one point that was trying to, I can't remember exactly which one it was, because I watched one about tobacco, one about gold, and they're always trying to teach these people, like, look, you're endangering yourself with all the toxins you're using and the stuff you're touching, and your kids are, going to be mentally impaired by the time you get done taking them to gold mines and things, and using mercury and boiling off mercury right into the nose of your child, which is a neural toxin, right? Destroys your brain. But this teacher looks at the camera, and he's obviously a very educated person. And this was one of the African ones I saw, and he just said really intelligently, he just said, look, man, I've been trying to help these people my whole life. And he goes, maybe you should help them, because nothing works. They won't listen to me. The poverty is so insane. There's nothing I can say to them to convince them to let their kids go to school. One of them was in India. They have kids working in coal mines. The conditions of these coal mines are beyond anything you could fucking imagine, unless you have a coal mining family. But even if you had a coal mining family and you do formal coal mining in, say, America, you would be shocked to see what these little kids have to do, man. They crawl in these little holes that are maybe 3 feet tall, like these slits with these, big pancake rocks over their heads that if they fall, they're just squashed straight. But they have to crawl like, 500 feet down into these, maybe it was even meters. I don't know. They kept going back and forth between standard metric or imperial metric. They said that the temperature for some of these areas, especially where they're digging quartz in Africa, they just go down these holes that they're deep, but it's like 50 degrees Celsius down there. Like, what? I know low 40s is like unbearably hot. So these kids pass out, they lose their energy, and then they can just die. It's crazy, right? So keep that in the back of your mind of what is the greatest threat. There are greatest threats that are much bigger than we are. And then there's the ones that we have to do to keep ourselves healthy, right? As I say in so many episodes, let's go back to the now. Your health. Detoxification of your body is, in America, it is, in a pure sense, it would be damn near impossible to pull off. You would never leave your house for food, other than to get raw products from a vendor that is buying, non-GMOs, and you have to kind of check that out as well. Trying to get meats that don't have a bunch of steroids in them or antibiotics in them. And there are places, like in my town, I would go to Mother's to get all my vegetables and eggs and milk and whatever, cereals. Any of the products I use in my bathroom, they're also all real clean. I mean, Mother's, you can just close your eyes and pick it up and it's good. And then Trader Joe's, which is a big chain here in America, carries really great beef. Whatever you want, chicken, turkey, beef, and it's all range fed. There's no hormones in it. So mixing those two together, you could get your supplies to eat. Now, water is really rough. There's this lava water we're getting from Iceland that actually says on the bottle, no fluoride. But you can also just drink distilled water, which they say is so bad for you because it doesn't give you minerals. And it's just kind of like, you just kind of look at them and you go, stop already, right? Everything that's good for you is negative, and everything negative for you is good for you, right? Detoxification is a very intense process, right? Part of it has to do with things that you're not getting that you need to get, like sunlight on your face. for half an hour to an hour a day. You really need about an hour a day. And that's a hard regimen. You got to eat lunch outside. In the wintertime, hell, man, it's barely bright enough outside to catch anything. Plus, it's overcast and stuff. But even overcast, it's still the same light, the light that you need on your face, such that your pituitary gland creates vitamin D is necessary. And I've mentioned several times that in Alaska and Russia, they actually take their kids and put them in front of tanning machines for I don't know how long, but they get them exposed to the equivalency of the frequency of the sun to make sure they have vitamin D, because taking vitamin D is a joke. If you're doing it, there's all kinds of theories about taking it with other things to make it absorb better. Nothing replaces the photonic wave hitting your skull and bouncing off that organ, thus stimulating the creation of vitamin D. Nothing. Sunscreen, well, most of it turns carcinogenic as soon as it hits the sun. But I'll just tell you what I've done in my own life. Once again, because it's been quite a few episodes since I covered this. The one I always forget to tell you, which I'm going to lead off with so I don't forget it, is your underarm deodorant. Antiperspirants are full of aluminum in most cases. Now, there's a lot of options since I started the show that people make non-toxic antiperspirants. Essentially what it is you have a bunch of glands in your armpits that are there to sweat. It's there to remove toxins from your body. So no matter what you're putting in those glands, whether it be the aluminum, which is horrid for your body, or other natural crystals or what have you, you probably shouldn't. But some people do struggle with body odor more than others, so I understand. I have been off of antiperspirants for so long, I don't remember when I made the change, but I just switched to deodorant. Now, I'm very lucky. I don't perspire much. And if I do, it's never usually in my armpits. If I went 2 days or something, or if I get out on the patio and I do a full workout session and it's been a day since I showered, yeah, I can smell myself, but it's mainly from other parts of my body. So that's the first one. And, I can't claim that there has been any noticeable effect. I don't know. Now, fluoride toothpaste, fluoride is super bad for you. It rots your teeth, and dentists love it. Dentists recommend it because it crushes your teeth. It blows up your enamel. It gives women osteoporosis. It settles in the pineal gland in your brain, crystallizes, thus making your flesh move out of the way. Same as your enamel in your teeth moves out of the way of these aluminum particles. That's what it actually is. Industrial fluoride is actually called fluorine before it's put in your toothpaste. And if you read the side of a fluoridated toothpaste tube, and it talks about how you're supposed to go to the poison center if you swallow more than a pea-sized amount of it. Well, come on, brush your teeth 10 times. You're definitely swallowing a pea-sized amount of it. It's toxic to the human body. The Army Corps of Engineers, again, buried a bunch of barrels underneath the Golden Gate Bridge in the late 40s of fluorine, which was a result of making all this aluminum-based products for World War II. Theory was that the barrels were going to age, break, and then diffuse into the ocean. There you go. I think I've had a significant brain augmentation since I got off of fluoride. But the other one that I was drinking so much of, I really can't believe. There was just a small point in time where I got on this and then I got off of it. But I was never a big fan of diet sodas ever because I thought Diet Coke and Diet Pepsi taste like shit. Couldn't do that. But Diet Dr. Pepper was pretty decent. And so the day I found out this information, like I've said, I had a 12-pack unopened of Dr. Pepper in my fridge. And I let it sit there for months until I just opened all the cans and poured them down the drain. But aspartame is horrible for your body. It turns into a formaldehyde derivative in your body. It also has unbound methyl ester, which is rubbing alcohol. It is known to give certain people grand mal seizures randomly. And the thing is that, I think Donald Trump said it, why is it that folks that drink Diet Coke are usually obese? It's because you have a huge problem with sugar intake and calorie intake. And this Diet Coke's a joke, right? Diet Coke sponsoring a women's cancer run is the biggest ironic joke for the cancer industry, right? This stuff was pushed to the FDA through one of the most corrupt moments in history. It's where the FDA actually became completely corrupt. And Donald Rumsfeld ran the company Searle. I think it's SEARL. Aspartame was a heart medication that was known to be about 25 times sweeter than sugar, but it killed everything. All the rats, all the monkeys. And so they bought off everyone in the FDA they could, and they had Reagan fire everyone unknowingly and appoint a bunch of pharmaceuticals to get it through. And then cancer rates went up, I think, 88% in the next 10 years. It's bad news, man. The other one I got rid of, and I've said the story several times, is that the microwave. I had one of the coolest looking microwaves on planet Earth. It looked like a widescreen television. It was so cool. I was very proud of my purchase. I didn't cook much in it, but you boil water, whatever. But what it's doing is it's shattering food compounds that nature put together into food elements. Some of those are okay, and some of those are horrid for your body. Methyl ester, which is unbound inside of aspartame, is bound to pectin on the skin of an apple. Now maybe you think, well, I don't microwave an apple. What the hell is the issue? And this is just an example. But let's say you had some pie, some apple pie, and there's remnants of the fiber from the skin on the apple itself. And then you microwave it because you want to put some ice cream on top or whatever. Well, when you oscillate a water molecule up and down 1 billion times in 1 second, you rip apart the methyl ester from the pectin. And when it's bound, it's fine. It goes right through your system. It's fiber. It's good. Just eat an apple. You're fine. But when you microwave it, you pull those apart, and then you have unbound methyl ester, which is a toxin to the human body. So I got rid of it. Plus, drinking water that is rotating still in the glass, in your coffee, and whatever the hell you think you need to heat up, just get a gas oven, and it's about the same amount of time, like 50% longer. So it's 50% fast, 50% more of fast, right? But you're an electrical system, right? Your whole nervous system is electrical. So last thing you want to do is put something in your body that's going to disturb the actual normal flow of electrons through your nervous system. Russia banned microwaves when they first came out, not to keep their citizens from enjoying microwaves, but because they did the due diligence on the technology and what it does to food, and said, we're a socialistic, communistic country with universal health care, and we don't want everyone coming down with problems because of this machine. So they banned it. Now, I shouldn't have to tell you that genetically modified food is very dangerous for you. Number one thing it does is sterilize you. Some people are very susceptible to it. It can make a woman allergic to a man's sperm. Fertility clinics exploded at the exact same time the GMO was introduced into American society. The second thing it does is it electrically rots your upper intestine. You have tentacles that hang and go up on your intestine to grab all the nutrients, because that's where that event occurs in your upper intestine. Well, it electrically shocks and literally stuns and burns away these little follicles that grab that stuff, and it takes 2 weeks to grow them back. So if you eat more GMO, they never grow back, and so you become extremely unhealthy. Well, I don't have to tell you what happens to your body if you don't eat what you are made out of, right? Because you can't ingest it because you're damaging your gut. Probiotics have blown up in the 21st century as sort of this repair mechanism. Stop eating it as much as you possibly can. Processed foods. Processed foods are bad, man. We're a lot of us are learning about the wet markets in Wuhan, where they have live animals until you buy them, and they slaughter them right there on the spot, and you take them home and you eat it. Well, technically speaking, there's no reason why China can't have wet markets. But the problem is that society is still evolving, and so they don't have hygiene where it needs to be. And so they have horrible markets with all this blood everywhere, and they store the animals horribly, and you can cringe that they eat every single animal on planet Earth, including all dogs and cats. But that's just a cultural difference. If they kept these places clean and followed some refrigeration and you hose down the blood as soon as it's created and all this other stuff, and check the animals for disease before they, you could have that, because eating fresh meat is obviously the way man has been on this planet for more years than the most recent, few hundred years where we've been able to refrigerate things. And the reason why is that when something is dead, it ionizes, meaning it's a negative electron clouds around all the atoms in the food become the predominant material. As it decomposes, it slows down. When it slows down, it's called death, right? So you can store a piece of meat in a refrigerator for a long time and then thaw it out, and it tastes normal. It doesn't taste foul, but as long as it's been dead for a really long time, you'll be able to slow down a little bit of that decay. You'll be able to slow down a little bit of that ionization. But if you can get it fresh, always get it fresh. When you eat lobster, you have to eat it fresh because lobster decays so quickly, it becomes a toxin. Most fish is that way, right? People don't save fish. People try to take calamari home from a restaurant, and if it's a good restaurant, the waiters will go, no, you can't take that home. You have to eat it right here, or that's it. You don't take squid home and try to eat it later, right? It's kind of gross anyway, later on. It needs to be warm, okay? So those are some physical properties that we need to be aware of to rid ourselves of cancers, okay? Well, then you have your overall stress pattern. Some people are wired very tight, and they do get stressed for the littlest thing in life. And I'm not exactly sure what causes that, because, I will say there is a theory that I came up with when I dated a girl who was 5 foot tall. She was a bodybuilder in a really beautiful way. And she liked to, she worked really, really hard in the gym, burning, hundreds and hundreds of calories in the gym. Looked unreal, head to toe. However, she would come home and eat a bunch of like cheaty food because she earned it, and she was never going to gain a pound because she'd go back into the gym. But when she would eat all this sugar, she was prone to panic attacks, especially when she went to bed. Now, the other thing that will lead into that is that you're a caregiver, you're a mother, you're a father. But for her, she was so tiny and she was eating so much sugar, which you're not supposed to eat. As a human being, you're never supposed to eat pure sugars. She had potentially 1,000 calories in her, 500 to 1,000 calories. And now she lays her head down. And now the chaotic days, events occur. What could happen? We talk about getting out of control with your mind in other episodes where you worry too much because you manifest up things. You eat too many black apples of what could happen, right? And I would wake up and she'd wake up. She slept like just beautifully, like an angel. But boy, she'd wake up sometimes and she's like having a panic attack. And I put my hand on her chest and her little heart was just pounding. And so I would use this voice of mine and just softly talk to her and ask her what she's thinking about. And we go through all the black apples and I'd tell her, hey, it's going to be okay. It's all right. Well, you're just worried about that because this and that, but things are okay. And what could happen? What's the worst thing that could happen in this scenario? It's okay. But I get her heart rate right back down and we go back to bed. She ended up having a few of these in a row. Actually, the day that she broke up with me was a result of like 3 or 4 days of these. And she was telling me what she was thinking. She was kind of hiding these panic attacks. And then like 6 months later, she called me up. She goes, I think we should be back together because I cannot remember why on earth I broke up with you in the first place. And I was like, yeah, neither did your family. It was really unfortunate. It's a really good connection there. But the other one is in the now, in terms of detoxification, is the most frustrating of them all, which I've talked about in different episodes, which is you're being exposed to things that you don't have any say over. Try to drink the tap water out of your house. Well, in America, it's about a 95% chance your tap water's got fluoride in it. Go buy an iced tea somewhere, or some soda, anything. Just get water at the restaurant. You're drinking fluoride. That's why it becomes exceptionally difficult. You bring your water with you every day? I suppose you could, right? Paradigm shift. We have more electromagnetic waves on our body than ever before. When I did my 5G episode, I think in season 3, I cover all the frequencies, but we're talking about, the average frequency of the Earth, I think is something around 20 hertz. But the amount of stuff you get off a 4G tower, let alone a 5G tower, let alone from a radio broadcast of any kind for television or radio, we're talking about billions of hertz, right? 5G is billions, potentially 100 billion hertz. Wow. I can guarantee you, I'm going to make a little prediction here. And you could archive this video and pull it out in 100 years and be like, that guy was Nostradamus, man. Here we go. We all look back at the 20th century in America where cigarettes were recommended by doctors. Doctors would smoke in surgical rooms. They'd smoke in your recovery room. Parents smoked around their kids. Like, cigarettes are completely different objects than cigars. For those of you who don't know, a cigarette barely has any tobacco in it. The stuff you're seeing that's brown inside the stick, at least in America, is paper. It's a cardboard derivative, and the brown is just the color that they put on the paper to make you think it's tobacco. But the stuff that makes you high by smoking the cigarette is this sludge, which is a tobacco derivative. But just like they mix crack cocaine down from cocaine into a bunch of other derivatives to make it cheap and to make the high real powerful, same thing with cigarettes. Some cigarette brands have up to 1,500 chemicals they add to the tobacco to dilute it so they can make a lot more cigarettes out of it. In recent years, they found out that the filter itself, the fibers from the filter, are being inhaled into the lungs, and at a microscopic level, it's shredding your sacs in your lungs. And once you lose your sacs, you don't get them back. You die. That's what lung cancer does to you. The cancer grows on your sacs and kills you. It's always infuriating when we get taxed and have to listen to the same shit when we smoke cigars. Cigars are 100, unless you do acid cigars or tasty cigars, the ones that have the additives to it. Don't ever smoke those. If you do that, you're smoking at your own risk. But this thing right here I'm holding in my hand is 100% tobacco. 300 people have touched this thing before I get to smoke it. No matter how cheap the stick is, unless it's machine made. But even if it's machine made, take it down to $250. It does displace your sugar levels, and but the FDA, their calculator online, when I first started smoking these in 2009, I went up there because I don't want to get cancer or something. They said if you ate any sushi from migratory fish, you had a mercury poisoning percentage. If you smoked any cigarettes, you're definitely in a cancer index. But in order to use the cigar calculator, which they removed, you had to smoke 6 cigars a day and inhale them. You cannot inhale a cigar. We don't inhale these things. They're just a puffing thing, right? So a little bit of the tobacco goes into your saliva and displaces your sugar levels, which makes you calm and cool. And even Tesla said that he smoked tobacco, I believe, in a pipe. A pipe tobacco and cigar tobacco are almost identical, except even pipe tobacco has flavoring in it. So this is more raw and more healthy in comparison. But these emissions are messing with our bodies. In the last year, because of 5G, a bunch of doctors have gone to city halls, who are all paid off shills, to tell them how dangerous 4G is. The G stands for generation, by the way. It's different than your home router. The G there is gigahertz, typically. But 4G and 5G is the next generation up, right? But it creates diabetes in humans. Now, I ran a game company for 10 years. And during those 10 years, what we discovered was, we had a client called Diabetes Games, which is gone now. But we learned a lot about diabetes making these video games. Because the game was that you played one of many games, and it would teach you all about your diabetes while you're playing the game. Make sure you did your little blood test for the day whenever you're supposed to do that. But insulin, which you have to take the shot if you're diabetic, is you don't make enough insulin to process your sugar. But you hear that for years and you don't know what that means. And the way it works is that sugar cannot enter the human cell by itself. The cell membrane, the actual brain of the cell itself, refuses to let sugar in, but it lets insulin in. So the way it works is that insulin drops into your system the second you're eating sugar, and surrounds the sugar with insulin. And then it goes into your cell and it is combusted as energy. Okay. When you're next to a bunch of high transmission tower stuff, what ends up happening is that as the insulin is flowing through your bloodstream, it is susceptible to the wave of energy that's penetrating your skin, especially at these high frequencies of 4 and 5G. And it starts to vibrate and shake the insulin. And it's like with someone, you ever type on your telephone and someone comes up behind you and just bumps your elbow to mess you up? Same thing. You hit the wrong keys, right? Well, the insulin misses the sugar. And then you go into insulin shock and you have a bunch of unprocessed sugar in your body, which makes you diabetic. It's a fact. It comes out of the Journal of American Medicine, JAMA. These doctors made a point, look, I'm reading you certified medical documentation. I'm not making this up. It's not a conspiracy. It's not off a YouTube video. Well, what are you going to do? It's $1 trillion business and they're going to pay everyone off, just like all these third world countries that have horrible toxins in their backyards. Eventually, what's going to happen? Here's my prediction. The way that we viewed cigarettes, the way we view cigarettes today is how we're going to view all this wireless technology at the end of the century. If there's any of us left, we're going to go back and go, oh my God, isn't it crazy? We put those towers in parking lots at schools. There's a Fountain Valley High School down off Slater and Bouchard in Fountain Valley, California. They're taking less than $2,000 a month to have a 4G tower in their right inside their property. It's up against a football field stadium balcony, but then again, it's less than probably 150 feet from the school. So these kids are trying to study, and now they're going to get all this ADD, ADHD stuff. They're not going to score well because their brains aren't working properly. Remember, the brain works on just an infinitesimal amount of electricity. And so you get these crackpot shills working for the companies that say, look, it's totally different frequency than the human mind. It's like, oh, okay. I guess my home speaker is also a different frequency than my brain. But if I stare at a speaker and it's jamming white noise at my face, my brain is not going to work that well. Have you ever noticed that when you're in your bathroom and you have the fan on, you can't think very clearly? Turn the fan off and all of a sudden, boom, your brain shows up. And you're like, oh, yeah, there's all the solutions to the universe. As well, if you get next to really high power stations, there's a big tower in San Francisco that has about a 93% leukemia rate at the base. For every 100 yards they go away from this thing, the leukemia rates go down. High tension towers with wires that pump, millions and millions of volts of electricity from one place to the other. And these homes are really cheap that are by them, right? Well, there's a residual pull coming off of every wire. It's just ethereal chatter coming off these wires, man. Again, if it was audible, nobody would buy these homes because they'd be like, what? Huh? I can't hear you. But since it's invisible to the eye and invisible to the ear, people buy these homes thinking they're killing it and they have problems. The one thing that corporations love, and I mean love, especially their attorneys, is that the second you catch cancer, there's rarely a cause and effect model. Now, there's been some people suing the crap out of Monsanto, which has been purchased by somebody. I can't remember who purchased them, but they're winning, hundreds of millions of dollars. In fact, some of them have won billions of dollars, but then they go back in and renegotiate and cut all the money down. It's crazy, even though the jury says pay him 4 times the amount of money that he asked for. So we have, in rare cases, an individual is able to tie something to something else, But the corporations always play like they don't know that their product is bad for people. One of the documentaries I saw was, I believe, in the Philippines. And they're getting kids hooked on tons of cigarettes. The cigarette companies can run ads on TV, and they captured some of their documentation, and they said, we are here to make kids feel more hip if they smoke cigarettes. They even interviewed the kids, and these women, these young girls, are like, oh, I actually am more attracted to a man who smokes because it's more manly. As I take a puff on this cigar. That's how it's going with all the stuff that we're addicted to today. I keep telling you that the closer you get to electromagnetic power supplies, like the battery in your phone, right? That's what's dangerous about the phones, is the battery supply, because the amount of electrons flying off that battery to create the antenna pole around your phone to make a field that is interrupted by the cellular tower, right? It interrupts it and it gets zeros and ones. It's Morse code, but it's all invisible to your eye. Any one of you, especially the ladies, man, if you store those phones in your breast pocket or in your pants pocket, you got your eggs already, man. The men make our eggs, right? We make our stuff, right? It's made new. Every time we use it up, we make new stuff. But you women have your eggs from birth and 2 ovaries, right? Depending on how soon you start your menstrual cycle, you could go way into your 50s and still have periods, and still drop an egg. For those of you who start at 9 years old, well, you're going to end much quicker and get into menopause a lot sooner. But if you put an electromagnetic field around all your eggs, you're shattering all the DNA inside your eggs. I mean, you could literally shatter an entire ovary all at once, you know, by habitually putting this in your pocket for a few years. My daughter, who's a chemist by degree, when she was in her undergrad degree, she's always kind of like, yeah, Dan, you know, whatever, chemtrails, all this other stuff. But she did a whole paper on cell phone cancer. And my God, she sent me diagrams of the chest x-rays and where the phones were. And we're talking about cancer in the shape of the phone, man. Unbelievable. So let's talk about the sky and air. We've always had particulates in the air, depending on what century we're talking about, right? Burning fires, burning coal, burning trains. And for some of us, I grew up in a train community in Kansas. Our whole town was based off the Santa Fe Railroad. It still goes through the town every day. But when those steam ones would come by during like celebratory things, and you smell that coal coming out of the train, man, it's super nostalgic, man. But unless you worked for the railroad, you weren't getting exposed a ton. Some of us go into garages and you smell the fuel and the oil, and it's just, oh yeah, man, let's drag apart some engine. Let's scrub some stuff off with the toothbrush for 5 hours, right? Well, if you do that every single day, you are ingesting a particulate. And that means anything other than oxygen is a particulate. We're not supposed to, but we do. But there is an immune system that fights things off. So it depends on how much you expose yourself as to how much your immune system can fix the issue. Now, chemtrails. Chemtrails are still widely unknown. It's almost like they fell out of the conspiracy circles, which is really sad. It's almost like everyone, fuck it, let's just join them, right? But I have interviewed, and my co-host from the previous show has interviewed at least 4 pilots. They all say the same thing. It's not us. They're very real. You're not allowed to talk about them. It's easier to talk about a UFO than it is to talk about chemtrails, as one of them told us. Air traffic control hides them. One of my friends said, he says, you know, I've had them in front of me when I'm flying, and I'll call down and say, what the hell is this plane doing here? It's not even showing up on my radar. The thing moves out of the way, and then they get a call back, never acknowledging that it existed, except to say, it's out of your way now. Extremely real. Well, what is it dropping on us? You got to see my episodes on chemtrails to really get the full details, and go see Morgellons, the Morgellon disease episode as well, to get some scary truth about that. It seems as if the primary thing that's dropped in all locations is barium oxide and aluminum oxide. My take on this is that, one, they get to get rid of a bunch of aluminum oxide, but it's also nano-sized aluminum oxide, meaning it has been manufactured somewhere. And that's confirmed by Dr. Russell Blaylock, who's a retired neurologist who chases around chemtrails and he chases around fluoridation of water because he's seen the effect of it on the human body. But they have a metal dust that's coming out in this line, but they need to spread it out, right? Well, why would you have barium oxide? It's a salt. It's a conductive salt. Well, let's say they spray Los Angeles with a bunch of grid lines, but then they hit it with an antenna, either from another plane, or it's part of the plane, perhaps. It could be another plane that flies by, or it could come from a HARP antenna. some derivative of that. And then what it does is, because the air is electrified, you have this thing called infrasonic undulation, which is to vibrate the air, and then it spreads out into what looks like a cloud. Again, the greatest trick you can play on a friend, especially a kid, but in other grown adults, even more phenomenal, is that you're going into a restaurant. Let's say you're going to go into a fast food restaurant. It's the middle of the day, and you can see them spraying. And you ask the person, what do you think those things are? What do you mean? Oh, those lines coming out of the back of planes. You're going to hear the word contrail. Okay. Go in and eat. Come back in 30 minutes. Point right back up to where that white line was, and it's now looking like a cloud. And then you want you to ask that person, well, what's that thing right there? What do you mean? Oh, that white stuff up there. What is that? Oh, that's a cloud, you idiot. Not realizing it's the same exact substance that they just said was a contrail. Contrails do not persist, and contrails do not spread out volumetrically. It's impossible. Now, they've invented some bullshit theories online, especially Wikipedia and Snopes and all that fucking bullshit. Seriously. Pray there's no God if you're writing that crap. But they've got some theories of why things expand all of a sudden. But when I was a kid, this stuff didn't exist. One of the reasons why I know that is my father was a photographer for weddings. He was a photographer every place we went. None of my albums as a kid have any of this crap in the sky, but you couldn't possibly film a wedding today, like my father did, 2 or 3 a month, without having chemtrails in the skies, that if you wanted the sky to be blue and it to be a wonderful picture, you'd have to tell the touch-up people to pull those out. Hollywood's average budget for a period piece, like say they're going to do Game of Thrones or some post-apocalyptic thing where there's no planes in the sky, it's $1 million to $3 million of post-production to remove these lines out of the sky. Well, that never existed in the past. Okay. Now, in the past, there were films made near Air Force bases where they're test flying jets. And when jets do afterburners, you will get a definite super duper contrail or fuel dumps or all kinds of like exhaust. But those engines are not in your average 737 or up to 787s, right? So in terms of the now, that's a huge one. This is just the physical nature of your existence right now. I haven't even gotten to political problems or globalism or any of that kind of stuff, right? Okay. Now, you need to see my episode on cancer. Okay? It's in this season. I redid it. You need to see it no matter what. Because if you want to keep your immune system at absolute peak condition, here's the formula. Okay? I cover a lot of different techniques of curing an instance of cancer. There is no cure for cancer in that you would be able to consume one product that would be able to augment your immune system forever, right? So you can catch cancer one day by one thing, cure it as long as you catch it early enough, and then go 10 years, 20 years, get some other toxification on your system by one of the means I just mentioned, and then cure it again. They're trying to demonize a vitamin, 2 actually. They want to make vitamin C prescription only. They're trying to do that behind your back. B17 has already been banned in Australia. And most people don't know about B17. They know B6 and B this and B that, but not B10, I think, is also really expensive. But B17 is found in apricot pits. It's all throughout sort of pits in nature. And technically speaking, what it does to cancer is what they call the cyanide effect. It actually kills cancer. But by killing other things in your body, like viruses, flus, bacteria in your body, it basically leaves your immune system the Maytag man where there's nothing for it to do, relatively speaking. And so your immune system is infinitely powerful. Your immune system can do anything. And so you take C every single day, no matter what. I take an 8-hour time release plastic capsule with powder in it. The brand I take is called Solar Ray. To spell the word solar, like sun, and add an AY on the end. The bottles are now kind of white transparent. They got a little rainbow on the top. Best brand in the world. I take a zinc copper pill as well, because zinc fights copper absorption. Copper fights zinc absorption. Take them together. The B17, the regimens I've heard patients who have cured themselves of stage 4, and I've taken now 3 people through it, with the fourth I'm waiting to get the results on. But they cure themselves within 4 months. And the regimen is 1,000 milligrams a day of B17, which is about a $100 bottle, but one bottle should last you, I think, about a month. It's two pills a day. But with time-release pills, especially C, you can do something called stacking, where you take a C every hour on the hour for your first 36 hours or so. So eventually, you'll have, anywhere from 10 to 20,000 milligrams of C to shock your system, to just absolutely annihilate a bunch of bad invaders in your body. Maybe not the cancer for the C, but then you're letting the immune system do its job. And just so you know, it's not hocus pocus. It's physics, okay? The C and the B17 shed electrons. And as it does so, it kills by shattering all of the bacterial invaders in your body and the RNA invaders in your body from a viral standpoint, although those are a lot tougher to hurt. But even if it can't touch your RNA because it's a real aggressive RNA, your immune system will kill it, okay? So B17's ejection of electron is stronger than the ejection of a C. That's why you take both of them together. They call the C to B17 a catalyst, meaning it makes the B17 more powerful. They're trying to ban it because they want cancer to stay on this planet. Again, cancer is 100% man-made product in virtually all cases. The only possible case, okay, is if you were like living in Africa or wherever they dig uranium and you're playing with uranium as a kid, you can wipe yourself out with that stuff. Okay, so what do we do moving up from us, our own personal health? Well, we sort of have what they typically refer to as the geopolitical environment conditions of the world. And I will tell you that having watched these 10 documentaries, it is apparent that the problems around the world are completely different and that the third world countries are all inheriting our old problems, of which we did unknowingly. They're now doing them unknowingly, except now the corporations know scientifically that they are putting these people at a fatal risk. Okay. The textile companies in Indonesia dropping, 600 chemicals into their water. Lead is in all their food now. All their rice is just full of deadly lead, which will, rot your brain and make you screwed up. I think it was Uganda takes a bunch of the electrical trash that we have from Europe and America, and their method of recycling is to burn it all. So imagine a copper wire with a bunch of rubber on it and a bunch of other bio-friendly toxins in it when you burn it, and they burn it, and they're sitting there inhaling all the smoke coming off the wire, all the rubber that's burning, they're inhaling it down to the point where the only thing left is the copper wire, and they take that off to get it recycled. But they're exposing their kids to it, themselves to it. It's really dangerous. There's the tin mining, digging out tin from big clumps of dirt, and they're exposing themselves to all these toxins. Gold rushing today. Again, when you have a bunch of gold dust, if you want it to turn into a nugget, you put some mercury in there, and then you burn it over a fire in a little skillet, and it makes the gold all come together into a nugget while the mercury burns off into the air. Well, they're breathing that too. It's atrocious, man, what's going on around the world. And that's why they keep these areas horribly repressed financially, such that they can't imagine another way of life, right? What was it? One of them was growing cocoa seeds, and I think Ghana. The other one's growing tobacco, and they used to grow corn, which was nice and easy to sell. But someone told them, tobacco sells for a lot more, so they switched their crops out. And now, for whatever reason, they can't go back to corn. And when you handle tobacco, something I didn't know is that you do absorb a ton of the nicotine when you handle it, and it that's like probably smoking a box of cigars a day, which would be good for anybody, right? So all these health issues. But what is the first world thing that's going on that's really frustrating? We have some, people going around the world trying to scare us about the climate. They're bothering citizens first and foremost, which is the first faux pas of the formula. We're not making the decisions about what our energy is made from. We're not deciding that there's a petrodollar out there that's valued on the sale of a barrel of oil. I don't decide my car runs on gas or coal to turn the lights on to make this show possible. I'm not making those decisions. So these Greta Thunbergs need to be talking to the bankers, the World Bank, the IMF, the kings and queens of the world that, you know, as atrocious as they are in existence, president of our country, the Ford Motor Company, Exxon, you know, BP. That's who they should be talking to. Instead, they're trying to punish us at the bottom to pay for the switchover for the people above us, right? They made the choices way above us hundreds of years ago, or by 1830 or so. And then now they want to have us pay for the change. Go see my energy episode. It's one of my favorite episodes. I was really cranky in it. One of the things I opened the episode with is raise your hand if you picked nuclear power. Raise your hand if you picked oil, coal, anything that's demonized today. None of you did, and none of your grandparents did either. You woke up alive and you started using this stuff. So don't lecture me, man. Lecture those who control that environment and make their $1 trillion bank accounts pay for the shit. But what's the name of the game with climate change? Why are we hearing about this? Because they're bothering first world countries. When I moved to Los Angeles in 1987, the air would suffocate you. My uncle went to optometry school at Los Angeles in the 50s. He said it was impossible to breathe. Shanghai, Beijing. Still today, you can't breathe. They have oxygen machines in Tokyo. Okay. LA, you wouldn't know that we ever had an air problem if you went downtown today. Not even on a busy day. When I lived in San Francisco, they'd have smog days, smog alert days. And man, it would burn your lungs like you're breathing a toxic fume. Burn like little needles inside your chest. It's amazing I lived through that. I think it's largely cleaned up. So first world countries are at the utter precipice of cleaning up everything. We have catalytic converters, and we have an emissions package that exists in California. I don't know if it exists in other states, but it costs 20 years ago, it was $500 more in your car. They've kind of kept it there because they know every car has to have it, and they don't want to drive up the sticker price too much in California. Where have you never seen Greta? Never seen her in China. Never seen her in India. Because it's not about climate change. The climate is changing, but it's like natural. In fact, it's getting colder. It's the mini ice age era that we're in right now. Now they spray the sky to control the weather to create anomalies. Like I said in my weather manipulation episode, which is just a couple weeks back, I tell you all the methods they use to fake that things are getting hotter. Again, don't forget, Al Gore said Montecito would be underwater by 2010 in his December 2006 movie. An inconvenient bunch of bullshit. He now owns a house in Montecito, and the water hasn't gone up at all. But boy, do you have people repeating this stuff like parrots because they want to be important and they want to feel superior to you, because the second that you don't buy their bullshit, they automatically go home thinking they're smarter. Right? That's why we have theories like the Big Bang. Well, housewife now can tell her housewife friend next door, you know how the universe was created? Fucking big explosion, man. Oh, goddamn. You must be from Cambridge University. Like that wheelchair fella. Project Veritas just stung ABC. And the dude that they stung, I don't remember his name, but he said it perfectly, which was actually fairly heartwarming for me to hear a leftist senior journalist say the truth. He said, look, commercialism and news cannot be mixed together. Otherwise you get fake news. And that's what we have now. We're following ambulances at this point, trying to make people watch our program. So we synthesize up, scandals that don't exist, Russia kind of crap, right? Climate change is all about depopulation. And because you guys have heard it so much, I'm only going to say a little footnote to this. So brace, don't worry, you're not going to get bored to death. They discovered that once they started using oil in this world, the population went up. So as energy goes up, so does the population. So in order to correct the problem, and the only reason why it's being corrected is because the elite are afraid that too many of us will exist and will take them out. That's the only reason why. The world is not even remotely overpopulated. Now, consumption marketing departments can kill the world in 2 seconds by making something too popular, right, that we don't need in this world. So we have issues like I saw a documentary on the pig market in China. China is now starting to eat meat for the very first time. And swines are great because they populate like crazy and boy, they provide some protein for you. But they have to feed those animals, right? They consume twice the amount of pigs / meat than America does, but the average individual only consumes 25% of what an American ingests. But I think they kind of understand that eating meat makes you have a bigger brain. It makes bigger people, right? And if you don't think that that's true, you've got to go to the Midwest and just measure the farm boys and then measure the city kids. One of them's Johnny Depp and the other one's The Rock. And that's the big difference, right? Hawaiian, Polynesians, they eat the crap out of pork, right? But so the fear is that if China continues to increase its pig population, they're going to have to start knocking down rainforests, and Brazil just sold theirs right off to the Chinese, man, just boom. So they clear the forest down to grow soybeans so they can feed their pigs, so they can eat meat. When China itself is not even remotely completely captured in terms of farming potential. But hey, if you can hurt someone else's backyard, why not do it if you have no morals? And again, because there's a difference between rich and poor. Nobody gives a fuck, right? You're either so poor you can't give a fuck, or you're so rich it's like, hey, I like being at a party and say, you know what? We cut down a whole rainforest so you could have this bacon with your food, right? But there's one other thing I want to throw back on the health risk thing. They demonized egg yolks around 1980 in America. And dementia and Alzheimer's started to skyrocket. Now, we've always had dementia. Alzheimer's is pretty new, the amyloid plaque problem in the brain. But demonizing egg yolks was one of the stupidest things they ever did. Because the cholesterol in an egg yolk is the good kind of cholesterol you need in your body. Hands down. Go ask anybody who's a fitness trainer, a nutritionist. They'll tell you. And if they don't, they're still sucking on some propaganda. But the gray matter in your brain is formed from the exact same carbohydrate that is in an egg yolk. And when you don't eat it, your gray matter starts to deteriorate. And then your neurons that are held apart by gray matter start to touch each other. And that's when your brain starts losing memories and you start remembering your past and not your present, right? You forget where you are and all that kind of stuff. Biden's got plenty of those problems. By the way, I talked to a guy, he's a big campaign dude. And he told me that Biden, for the people that take care of that guy, he said he's good about the time he wakes up in the morning to about noon. And in the evening, he's just loony. Because he's deteriorating. He's got that problem. So what they're trying to do with carbon credits is make it too expensive for you to procreate. Again, the world's not overpopulated. It could be very quickly. By the end of this century, if we were on the current path we're in, which is almost a straight up arrow of population growth, which is really the culprit of China, India, and South America. Even Africa can't overpopulate because they got that place so locked down, I don't even know what the percentage is, but I'm going to make a guess that maybe 80% of Africa has no power or running water. I mean, they've got that place locked down so it can't expand, So carbon credits, it's a joke. It's a joke. And as I've said to you guys, and you absolutely positively have to watch if you're interested in this, because I can't possibly repeat everything I said in a previous episode, but the Agenda 21 is the umbrella for the entire world operation at this point, from the globalists down to us. If you hear about any other program, it is a sub-program to Agenda 21. Agenda 21 was signed by 159 countries in 1992 or 3, and it's been in operation since. Now, in America, Agenda 21 makes someone roll their eyes. It's a conspiracy. In Europe, they meet every single year. Every 10 years, they have a huge Agenda 21 summit for the EU. So over there, it's fact. Over here, it's fiction. Isn't that interesting? How they can quarantine our brains in the 21st century with the internet. And there's a link in the description of that video for Rosa Koire, Koire. And I'm going to mention her demographic for one reason, is that she is the least likely person to support Donald Trump. But now she's a Trump supporter. I would guess that she's probably in her mid-50s. She's a lesbian, and she's a libertarian, excuse me. She is an attorney by training. She used to handle the evaluation of land grabs by the state of California in what we call eminent domain in America, where they steal your land and give you 10 cents on the dollar, if not less. I don't know how many years she did this job, but she did this job, and then she started seeing kind of a shadow government underneath the state of California, where people couldn't get their land that they owned zoned for the smallest thing. I think she mentioned one was a guy had over 4,000 acres of land in Northern California. He just wanted it zoned to build a little structure, and they wouldn't give it to him. So he said, fuck you, I'm going to build this thing anyway. It's my land. What do you mean I can't build it? It's not, there's no turtle endangerment. It's not a wetland. It's just land. And when they found out, they went up there and fined him for doing it, fined him every day that it took him to clean it up. And they said, you have to take all this down and you have to restore the ground to the way it was before you did it, which is impossible, of course. They're working with all of the people in the world that will take a check, which is nearly every politician on planet Earth. And they're working with people that are appointed, like the FDA, CDC, EPA. They're all appointed people. So you can just lobby someone straight into the sheet of potential hires and you can get the job. And you're just changing the world to this globalist thing, right? It shouldn't be any mystery to you that what's interesting is I open this show with now, short-term, long-term, right? Right now, as of 2020, it's a very interesting time to make this episode because all of those agendas are compressing into the activation moment right now. What they're trying to do right now, they've been trying to do it for several years, but they're in overdrive right now, is that they are trying to create this huge depopulation event. And then they're going to move everyone out of the rural areas by law into major cities and then survey the shit out of them, right? I would say that if they were to succeed, which they won't, at least in America, they won't. I think Paris, France is fighting back too. Hong Kong's fighting back. You know, humanity won't allow freedom to be removed. And any shill that is willing to take away someone else's freedom without a crime is a disposable human being. Don't know if you can rehabilitate them. You know, once you become a consumeristic shill that'll take money for some short-term gain for the long-term destruction of your own society and your own people, then you're the biggest scumbag on the planet. And there seems to be, because of this difference between rich and poor, they knew how to create that event. It's super easy. And then they create an event where someone is suffering so much, they take the money. They murder people. The sand mafia thing, they were talking to one of the gentlemen that his father was noticing the sand being taken out of his field, and it was screwing up the water irrigation. It was killing all of his money. And so he was reporting it to the authorities, which were already paid off, which was naive. But they came into his house and AK-47'd him in his bed, killed him. And in the documentary, they think they actually went up and talked to the guy that actually pulled the trigger, who was kind of lightly threatening the British film team, but she knew that she's a British citizen. So if an Indian citizen killed a British citizen, shit's going to change, right? So he didn't go too far in it, but he was definitely saying that, you know, the people who are here, who live here are now in danger because you're filming us doing this illegal thing. But if they were to get their way, our ability to predict how bad the world would be in those concentration camp cities, which is what Rosa Koire calls them, I don't think we could fathom how bad those environments could be at all. Because this discrepancy between the rich and the poor that creates this environment that I'm talking about would be enforced by design, right? Every citizen in the world. We're talking about, let's just say that they reduce world population in their estimation of a maximum of 500 million people, which is on the Georgia Guidestones. Rosa Guidestones. Hers would be awesome. The Georgia Guidestones, which the first commandment on there is to maintain world population under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. Let's say there was 500 million. There won't be. There'll be a lot less, okay? But let's just say they peaked it out. How many people do you think would actually run the world at that point? I would say with the respective monarchies that you Europeans allowed to exist, and the bankers that live over there, and the bankers that we allow to live over here, we don't purge George Soros is off this planet. And probably some neocon Koch brothers and stuff, but I don't even think they're really in the crowd either. They just live in Sedgwick County, or was it Johnson County, Kansas? I don't think they're part of the big echelon. But I think you would have probably, 2,000 or 3,000 people of the families, with probably only a few hundred, maybe a few dozen, that would dictate the entire world's operations. What clothes you are allowed to wear, what haircut you're allowed to have, what you're allowed to learn, what you're allowed to do. Everything would be dictated to you. Your whole life would come in an email or a printout, and that's what you would have to do for the rest of your life. Your freedom would be so utterly gone that I don't know. I don't even know what freedom would be at that point. I got to sit on the toilet for extra 60 seconds. Whoa, what a great day, right? That's why I think they, I sound like a broken record to the hardcore listeners, but THX 1138, George Lucas's first film, that's probably a pretty good estimate of how the world would work. And if you haven't seen that movie, you need to go see it. I think you can see it for free on Netflix. He named his sound company after it, THX. And 1138's all throughout his movies. The prison cell that Princess Leia was in was 1138. So the other great threat to our life in the short term, one I think is socialism. I think voting for candidates that want socialism means that your grasp of reality is in the negative. Every single communistic country started off with socialism. Every single dictator that's ever killed tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of their own people started with socialism and a gun grab. So to want that means that, find a bridge and start depopulating, would you? I read that today. Pretty funny. We have this coronavirus thing going around, which is actually interesting for the topic, and someone wants me to cover it. I will only cover it after it's gone, or if it goes to another stage where I think we really understand what's happening here. There's an old saying. Hunter S. Thompson reminded us of this saying on the day of September 11th, 2001. And he took a radio interview and he said, they said, well, who do you think did this? This is before a couple hours later, they were like, oh, it's definitely Osama bin Laden, blah, 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 blah. He said, well, I think you need to look at who benefits from this. And he goes, then I think you'll find out who did it. Now, that guy's a very strange guy. But boy, did he nail it, didn't he? Now that we know about 9/11 and who did it and why they did it, we don't know all the reasons why they did it. We don't know all the first names of everybody who did everything. But there's been some deathbed confessions of people that blew up Building 7, saying they blew it up too cleanly and they thought that was going to get them caught. The coronavirus has accomplished two things, and the listeners on our Facebook group know this for a fact because they posted about it. But Hong Kong had really a couple problems. They had Hong Kong protesters continuing to fight to keep mainland China away from Hong Kong, because Hong Kong, for those of you who don't know, was under British rule for 100 years as a lease. I think it's just 100. But they lost the lease in the late 90s, And of course, it took a long time to figure out how the hell to absorb that from the mainland China. But now they're trying to push communism into China, into Hong Kong. And Hong Kong has enjoyed freedom, real freedom. And so they're like, no way. You know, they're trying to detain people into mainland China to squash free thinkers while trying to facilitate the migration from mainland China into Hong Kong by setting up families with tons of money to move in and buy property and basically cleanse it genetically of freedom. So the coronavirus has cleared the streets in Hong Kong. I mean, I think it's coming back here shortly, but now whether or not it's a real virus or a fake virus, you know, I know it's heresy to even suggest such a thing because we've seen videos of people falling down in the streets. There's a couple things about those videos that don't jive. And I'll tell you two examples. One, I've seen probably a dozen videos of people lying on the ground as a result of supposedly dying from this flu, and they're bleeding out of their faces. Now, you could say maybe they fell and hit their face and then that broke their nose and they're bleeding for that reason. Maybe that's the reason why that's occurring. There certainly seems to be almost a unanimous situation there. Another one is the surveillance shot of a guy working as a security guard at a desk, and he seems to be kind of, you know, lethargic. And then he suddenly starts screaming this horrible, gut-wrenching scream. Literally, gut-wrenching is what it sounded like, right? It's like a deep guttural scream. And he falls down on the ground and he's dead. Well, I'm not aware of a flu that does that to you. Flu kills you by infecting your body with such a viral infection that's so aggressive on RNA, DNA strand level that your body overheats trying to kill it and you pass out. So people falling down in the streets, it just, you know, boom, on the ground. That makes more sense to me. Then bleeding out, I don't understand what that is, right? Ebola will make you bleed out of every orifice in your body. Totally different thing. So it also, it's going to rebound here shortly. And anyone who sold their stock as a result of the coronavirus is going to be very, very pissed off with their broker. Or if they did it themselves, what idiots. So we've had like about a 2,400 plus. It's going to change. So this number is not going to be right when you hear it, but probably about 2,500 point drop in the stock market, which is up 57% or some shit, right? So big deal. And they say it's because of the coronavirus, and it's just a ludicrous assertion. That's an excuse for an absolute, you know, a person who's completely ignorant about how economics work. Well, someone made a bunch of phone calls. Did you hear about the coronavirus? You know, sell. Well, every time you sell, what happens? Well, you get a little bit of money in your pocket. So a bunch of people sold their stocks at a really high level amount. Oh, cry me a fucking river when you take all that money into your bank account. But it does drive down the stocks. Well, when you know it's a bunch of fake propaganda, I mean, regardless of this virus being real or fake, doesn't matter. It doesn't affect the stock market, right? Yeah, some factories have been delayed a month or two, but it was also Chinese New Year. They were already shut down for a month anyway, okay? So factories are coming back online. I got friends in Shenzhen. My buddy has all of his musical instruments made in China. They're coming back online next Monday. Okay. So it's all going to start back up again. Yeah, they're going to have some backlogs, but Chinese people work hard, so they'll get it done, right? If there's one thing Chinese people do, they work their asses off and they enjoy it, you know, because they like what they do. In some cases, right? At least the two people that I know. Okay. So the stocks go down. Well, if you know you're pumping and dumping using coronavirus as an excuse, well, then you go in and buy all those stocks a lot lower. And then you wait for it to go back up because you know there's no reason why it's down in the first place. You made it up. And if you were to do that, formerly in the United States of America, if Goldman Sachs put out a fake alarm and got a bunch of stocks to sell, people will go to jail because you can't manipulate the market with fear like that. At least if it's a complete fraud, right? So anyway, that's all going to repair. But what's interesting about it is, you know, what is it? We haven't had a single person die in the United States of America, but the Democrats are trying to, you know, blame Trump for this whole thing. It's just like unbelievable how low these people will go to get their socialism, right? Now you have to understand that there are people that really do believe in socialism, right? They really do believe it'll work. And the beautiful thing is that by allowing people like Bernie Sanders to come out and lie about, Fidel Castro, his big thing was that Fidel Castro launched a literary program for his citizens the second that he took over the country. But what he doesn't tell you is the literary works that they were reading was the Communist Manifesto. It was a reconditioning, reprogramming doctrine to make his people believe in what he was doing. Well, go look at Cuba. Go look at it. It's still in the 50s, man. People drive around old cars from the 50s. It's the last time they saw modern society. What were the two main products? Tobacco and sugarcane, right? Okay, man, they do make some good cigars, let me tell you. The word on the street is that a lot of Cubans have New World tobacco in them because there's no way they can physically keep up with demand. So, and only Americans are sanctioned from the normal sales. Like we can go over nowadays and buy $800 worth of cigars for personal use. But, and the assertion is that if I were to take if I paid $20 for a Cuban cigar, which would be a really expensive cigar in Cuba, and then my friend wants to buy it off of me because I'm like, I'm not going to give the fucking thing away for free. It's like, okay, well, give me $20, dude. That's what I went to it for. So there's a lot of misunderstandings about how that could work. But anyway, I rarely smoke Cubans anymore because they're just too expensive. They're good. They're great. I made a video about it if you guys are interested. A bunch of you asked me to make a cigar video. Just look up cigar, the word, in the search engine of this channel, and you'll find them. You'll find at least two cigar videos on that. But anyway, as I've said in several videos recently this year, in 2020, if you really want to know what's your greatest threat, your health is probably the most profound threat because, if you're not healthy, what can you do? The medical industry is designed to bleed you dry. And the hospice is the next level of that where, I've got a friend of mine, again, whose father is dying slowly of advanced Parkinson's. And the poor guy, worked till he was 79 to get maximum benefits out of Social Security. And then he retired and he immediately was diagnosed with Parkinson's. So he never got a break his whole life, which is why it's important to read Rich Dad, Poor Dad and learn the difference between, valuing your life by how much you work for the man, right? Ladies, there's no job you can have that should bring more satisfaction than being a mother and raising some kids and really staying on them and really raising them and not just sending them off to the schools and stuff. And then you can do whatever else you want. But working for the man is a game that the men have been trying to escape forever. Right? The rat race. We call it the rat race for a reason. And the women are like, let me into the rat race. I'll prove that I'm a woman. I'll prove that I'm an equal to a man. It's like, hey, us guys have been slaving in the rat race to provide homes before we lost the single income household in the 70s due to the movement itself, the feminist movement. We all got sucker punched, right? But it's just a game that no one should want to play. We were all self-employed 150 years ago. What did your dad do? He's a blacksmith. What did your dad do? He makes shoes. What did your dad do? He farms. What did your dad do? He fixed cars. Everybody worked for themselves. The idea that we have to take our car to a place to get the oil changed. So cars have been made so convoluted, right? They want to pat themselves on the back about how great a car is. Man, go check out the YouTube video on the new Acura NSX car oil change. There's like seven spots where the oil comes out. You have to disassemble the car to change the fucking oil. Okay, let's give the engineering team a big giant F+. It should all root down to one hole, easy to access. Don't have to take off a plate off the bottom of the car. You have to open the hatch up and disassemble the entire interior of the hatch to get to all these little spots. And you're spilling oil all over your car. I mean, it is just god awful. Can't change your spark plugs anymore. Can't change your brakes anymore. Like everything's been made so you have to suck the tit of a corporation. And we're fighting to work for these people? Are you kidding me? I sit in a smoke lounge, routinely. Especially with the guy that owns the place. He's a good friend of mine. And he and I have been self-employed for so long that we look at each other, we have these conversations like, man, people who've never been self-employed, they just have no clue how drunk they are on this control apparatus. And there are great jobs that you can get working for great companies. Don't get me wrong. But I think the majority of them aren't that great. I think everybody feels it, but because we're sort of in a Stockholm syndrome situation, we convince ourselves that it's okay. I don't know. Of course, if you live in a democratically run state in the United States of America, they're working for Agenda 21, which is to try to increase the taxes and fines to be self-employed. I shouldn't say fines, but the taxes and fees you have to pay to be self-employed to the point where you're going to have to be already rich to start your company. And boy, if you have a bad year, you're screwed. You can't even afford to close your corporation because you can't afford to file your taxes. You can't afford to pay off the move just to get out of your office complex. I had to move myself out of my game studio myself. I had friends come and help me move. I mean, at some point my girlfriend helped me move. It was humbling as you could possibly imagine, right? And because I couldn't store all the supplies we had accrued over 10 years, I was eating at a barbecue place in Costa Mesa, California. And I didn't know it, but the owner was kind of a hoarder, or the manager. And so I just casually talked to him. I said, do you have any, need for a desk? How about a PC? He's like, oh yeah, man. He brought a big ass truck. And I swear to God, he must have come 3 times. I gave him desks that were still in boxes, man. I must have gave him 3 CPUs, right? Because I just couldn't, I probably should have sold them all online, but I was so exhausted from the process. I didn't want to spend a month selling a computer for $200, or some stupid thing like that. Plus, if I made any money, I'd have to give it to these, my old partners and stuff like that. So we all just agreed, just dump it, man. Just get rid of it. Because I asked everybody, you want any of this crap? Because you'd have to drive down here to come and get it, right? But they'd already driven down to give it to me from my North office in LA as we downsized. But, I lost my company because of these bankers, creating all these crazy scandals, subprime loan scandal. Killed my company, killed my clients first, then killed my company. When you've been self-employed and when you've become aware of things like Agenda 21, and the thing is, I didn't learn about Agenda 21 being the umbrella project until probably about a year ago. But I've known about Agenda 21 for 15 years. I just didn't know how comprehensive it was, right? And Rosa Koire was literally the last linchpin in the whole thing for me to figure it all out and put it all together, because she's utterly brilliant, man. Talk about a super high IQ woman who talks from the heart. She doesn't read speeches, and she can talk for hours and hours and hours. And she's an attorney, man. So when she's presenting the information to you, she's presenting it to you like an attorney who's about to win a case in court. So it's kind of like Michael Rupert back in the day, who was a police officer who was presenting his case for drug importation by our intelligence agencies, a lot of stuff about 9/11, and he was presenting it as a police officer in a court of law with facts, God bless him. He miraculously blew his brains out one Sunday night after a podcast. I would normally think that he would have been murdered, but he was he bought into peak oil. He bought into a bunch of other things, and he really thought the world was going to end. He did a Vice episode before he died where I thought, my God, I'm surprised he's still on planet Earth with as negative as he was. He was the guy that couldn't sleep at night from what he knew. He didn't find it a benefit. He found it a negative, but he was shot at. He had his office in Canada ransacked and all of his property destroyed. And he just kept running out of money trying to restart his operation. Like From the Wilderness was his old company name. They say that revolutions are won with less than 5% of the population. So like the Revolutionary War, I think the amount of soldiers that fought versus the amount of citizens here in the United States was less than 5%. And they fought for years and years and years, from the 1770s all the way up to 1812. And so, if you think you're insignificant to get educated and make a change, it's not true. If you're just part of that 5%, I think with the internet, we could definitely eclipse a deep double-digit percentage of people willing to fight back. As much as this QAnon thing is becoming increasingly annoying, where, he spends 90% of his time trying to prove that he's with Trump and 10% of the time fulfilling any prophecy of major, cataclysmic arrests or anything, right? All the people that have caused all the headaches in the last 20 years are free people right now. And so, but they're making all kinds of predictions that are pretty outrageous right now. I mean, today was a Joe M. pretty much said that Steven Spielberg's going down for pedophilia. Oh, okay. That's a real big claim, man. That would be earth-shattering for the United States of America. And I've made so many episodes where I use that guy as a reference. If that ever happens, I don't even know what to do. I'm telling you, a pedophile is a hero. But, you getting educated about your own health, protect yourself. I have made dozens and dozens of episodes that are hopefully really helpful for all things from, season 1. I just looked at the playlist because I've been doing hashtag entries for my old videos. So they get in the search engine, the new algorithm that's using hashtags as well. But I went back to season 1. In fact, I went on, because season 1's on a different channel now because everything's been remastered. So go to the deepthoughtsradio.com and click season 1. You'll see all the season 1 videos. The website's podcast is all the old original MP3s. One day I'll update all those. But the first season is really me trying to give you all of the tricks of the trade and the wisdom that I have accrued through massive, painful scars from doing it all wrong, or things I learned from mentors that kept me from experiencing those things. So I gave it to you through episodes. So my hope is that that saves you a lot of time. The cancer thing is almost hard to believe, but I'm telling you, man, I've had a girl who was a friend of my girlfriend who was in stage 4, told she had 6 months to live. 4 months later, fully cured. We've had 3 people in the comment sections, because I've done the cancer episode 3 times. And so the new one is the best one so far. But people in the comments are like, I just used this technique and all my lymph node cancer went away. It's 3 months later. And the first guy that ever commented like that was like, this is a miracle. I don't even know what to say. Wish I could hug you, whatever, and it was like, oh my God, that's phenomenal, right? So this stuff works for a lot of people. And there's other techniques in the videos, way more intense techniques that are easy to do. And you can do chemo at the same time if you didn't trust it. Problem is, if you do chemo, it kills 97% of people who take it. And it's just that story. Oh, well, the cancer got him, So getting educated, like again, when you mention Agenda 21, you need to say, look, what I'm about to tell you is a conspiracy in the United States, but it's a yearly meeting in the UK, in the EU, excuse me. I guess UK used to be in that meeting. And, Britain getting out of the EU is profound, people. At some point, and this is what's sort of the catch-22 with this whole thing. If we stop these globalists, 100%, get rid of the EU, get back all the unique currencies of Europe. Yeah, maybe they keep the euro around for a little while, but you need to get back the Deutschmark and the French franc and all that stuff. Get back the culture of your country, for Christ's sake, man. I don't want to come to Germany and eat, falafels. I want to eat knockwursts. I want to go to France and eat a pastry and not some Middle Eastern thing. It's not like I don't want to have those restaurants there, but it's like I want the thousands of years that these countries have incubated up their culture to still exist, right? I want to experience France the way that Mark Twain did, But if we kick their asses at the 5% level, then the 95% won't appreciate what we've done. Because the scenario that they avoided, they'll never know about it. And so you'll still have these Bernie Sanders going out there trying to sell socialism because no one got to experience it. All these people that would love socialism, like Bernie Sanders, should be forced to live in Brazil in an average apartment for 1 year. He would be screaming for a Delta Force extraction within 15 days. Guarantee it. Especially at 80 years old. When he sees children being murdered by children in the streets. And I just want to put a point on that. If there's anything I'm not exaggerating about, it's the deaths in Brazil and Argentina and Venezuela, because it is horrible down there right now. And I've seen, I don't know, hundreds enough videos on various channels on YouTube, or sorry, YouTube, on the internet, where it's there. They put a lot of funny videos in there, but they put some of these in there every once in a while for those creeps that like to watch that kind of stuff. But I'll watch it just to see, okay, is this real? Is this fake? Whatever. And man, it is like every week. I have the opportunity of seeing probably 6 disgusting videos of people murdering young people murdering young people down there. I stopped watching it because I was like, okay, it's real. Don't need to see any more. I mean, it makes the beheadings in the Middle East seem like summer camp, man. So if we do beat these folks, okay, and I encourage you to watch these specials from the Deutsche Welle, Velle. I don't know how to say it. Maybe someone in Germany can help me say it. It's a channel on YouTube. Just watch them all. Get a sense for, they're going to mention global warming again, but whatever. Just where can you go not listening to that crap? We have to then go and help these third world countries somehow. I don't know how to do it. If we don't export, for instance, like with the textile companies in Indonesia, there's a Japanese company named Unique. The Gap uses textiles from Indonesia, excuse me. If you don't buy those products and you post on the internet, at least, I'm not buying your products because you're using textiles from Indonesia where they don't clean their water before they throw it into the, I forgot. I can't say the name, but it's one of their main rivers over there, and it's their biggest river, and was known as the cleanest river in the world before they started doing this. People are bathing in this. They're drinking from it. Same thing in Africa. If we say, look, customs is doing a shitty job protecting these electronics from going to Africa. So these people are down there dying, trying to recycle this stuff. Tobacco companies are getting kids addicted to cigarettes, of all things, right? Be a little bit different if it was tobacco for a cigar, But then they need to give these kids gloves, and they live in the same house where they hang the tobacco, and you don't do that. Even Cubans and South American folks don't live in the same place. A lot of them wear these gas masks because it's so toxic from the ammonia coming off these things, right? But you have to also heed the warning of that teacher who simply said, well, you help them. I've been trying to help them my whole life and nothing works. And it's this discrepancy between rich and poor. Sounds like a socialism fix, right? I'm willing to bet if we just curb a little bit of our consumption as a human being, which we probably won't, but whatever. My hope is that we're going to get tired of all this crap, that the kids, the Zoomers, are going to get super duper tired, which I think is about 1995 is when the first year starts for Zoomers up to 2015. It's about a 20-year gap. That they're going to get tired of technology and just go, yeah, you and your stupid cell phone games that suck. I'm going to go out and learn how to pitch a baseball or a softball, or I'm going to play hockey, or I'm going to do a skateboard rail or whatever. I'm going to learn how to shred a guitar. I'm going to learn how to play the drums. Learn how to sing. I'm actually going to make my clothes. You just kind of get back into the crunchy world. Don't know. Maybe. Getting involved, getting educated, and spreading the information, and knowing how to get over the hurdles of rejection, like someone saying, Agenda 21, bleh. And you go, well, the Bilderberg Group was a conspiracy for 50 years until the guy who was the CEO in 2004 took a video interview. Oh, now all of a sudden they exist. Oh, well, that's how it works. Illuminati? Oh, really? That's a word that we created. We're all crazy people for using that. Well, that was the name of a book in 1646 or something. They wrote a book. They called themselves that, not us, right? So I'm tired of us having to fight ignorance, but it's just the name of the game. Sorry. Anyone who's trying to help humanity runs into that. But also don't forget to live your own life at the same time. So detox yourself, detox your family, all your loved ones. At least if you control your kid's life, you can do that. You won't be able to get your brother or sister, mother or father to do it. But, what'll be interesting is you won't get sick and they will. They're constantly getting the cold. You're taking C every day, 1,000 milligrams minimum. I take about 2 now since shit's going around, right? I don't get sick. If I have a razor blade kind of drainage in my throat at night, I pop a C, wake up. It's like it never happened. It's a miracle drug, I'm telling you, man. Anyway, I've gone on a long time here. If you haven't been to deepthoughtsradio.com and you're new to this whole thing, please go and bookmark the page. That's just in case we move anywhere. I put a couple extra links up there. I finally put Brighteon up there for those people just loyal to that platform. We need about another 315 views on videos before we get the next next 50, maybe even next 100. And then I think it'll start organically taking off. I don't like Brighteon's policy because I think it's bullshit. They claim it's just because their platform sucks so bad, but BitChute's able to enter the market with infinite videos. So everything's on BitChute as of tonight. The podcast is updated tonight. I also did Gab.com because I'm hearing about people liking that. Gab is sort of like a Minds.com, Facebook.com. We'll see. There's like 4 subscribers up there. So again, if that's your poison, go ahead and get up there. But we have the links for video, links for audio podcasting. Again, it's on iTunes. It's on the Google store. We have social media is, again, Facebook, Twitter, Minds.com, and now Gab.com. We also have a way you can donate to the show, which is PayPal or Patreon. Patreon gets you a lot more because you get the episodes before everyone else. We finally have some Patreon subscribers that are nailing the videos before they go up. So for about 6 months or so, I'd post it, a day or two before, and then 3 days later, there's no views, but these people are paying for the privilege to see it early. So now we finally got some folks going in ahead of time. So I'm very pleased with that. Because we have a store with shirts in it, there's a 20% discount coupon in there as well. And you also get the credits for the rest of your life. No matter if you just donate for a month and walk off, you can get that for $1 donation. How about that? When you do PayPal, you're totally anonymous. So I don't know who the hell you are at that point. I actually did make some virtual currency from the Brave browser. So I don't know if that's a result of my running around or one of you downloaded that link, but it was like, I don't know. It's like a fraction of a penny or some shit. But so a Brave browser I do promote, and then Backblaze is pretty amazing. There is a bit of a bug with Backblaze on the Macintosh, at least. I've never had this issue on the Windows platform, but it will back up outside of your scheduled backup time frame, and it really does rack your computer processor and your hard drives, depending on what kind of computer you have. So if that's an issue, just know you need to go up there and say pause backup, or you can switch it to the point where you just bump it once a day, and it'll just go when you're going to sleep. You just go, hey, back it up right now. But other than that, is the cheapest platform on planet Earth. It's like $8 or something like that for infinite storage for one computer. So that's pretty cool. I think if you pay 10 or 11, you get like a recall for like a year, which is really cool. I just saved my butt the other day. I didn't need to back up. Hadn't lost any files, but I went to another location with my laptop thinking I had something in my Dropbox, 3D illustration I was doing. And I had moved it out of my Dropbox into another drive. So I just went up to Backblaze, looked in the old folder just before I moved it, hadn't changed it since, backed up that one file. I was off the races and finished my project that night. So very cool. The store does have 2 designs. I've been told my designs have shipped to me, so I'll be wearing those very shortly here. I'll make an episode during the day just to show off. But one's a fun one that says I like UFOs with the branding on the back, and the other one just has the UFO broke down into like a schematic on the front. It's based on the Bob Lazar sports model UFO he talked about. That's why it says sports model on the front. And there's some Morse code in there too. It's kind of cool. But anyway, other than the season 1, which is on its own channel, that's about it on the bumper. But anyway, until the next episode, take care of yourself and someone else, and I'll see you on the next Deep Thoughts. Over now.